Hello guys, welcome to the CSS course for beginners. I'm so excited to start another journey of learning adventure with you. Without any further ado, let's dive straight in. Yeah, so let's do a bit of setting the stage before we begin, as we would always do. This course is absolutely for beginners. It means if you've been developing for a while now, you might not benefit a lot from this course. But if you're a beginner and you're looking out to start out a dev career, this course is definitely for you. And it doesn't mean if you've been programming also you can't learn one or two things, but it's really not targeted at, which is really targeted for beginners. This course is going to be a continuation of the HTML course that we previously ended few weeks ago. Yeah, that was last week. So it's going to be a continuation of the HTML course. I'm going to be putting a link above for that course. It means it's a prerequisite. If you've not taken that course and you're on this, it is very important that you take few minutes to take that HTML course and then come back to continue from this. Again, I say be patient, like I've always said, and like I would always say. I know videos like this are long. I mean, this is going to take for the next 1 hour or so. And I know you're probably used to watching 20 minutes of any brain taxing video, but if it's Netflix, you could go for 3 hours because it's mainly fun. I mean, who doesn't? But the truth is, if you're going to learn any craft at all, patience, dedication, and hard work is the key to learning any craft at all. Any craft, you name it. So there's there's nothing such as 10 minutes to learn CSS or 10 minutes to know CSS. There's nothing like that. If you see anything like that, just run away because it's never gonna work. So you'd have to be patient and be willing to learn as well. Be willing to learn. That's the major key. Yeah. So be patient. Pick up your book. Pick up your PC, and let's dive right in. So what is CSS? CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. Now we spoke about HTML last week, and we said HTML is the building block of the web. Yeah. So we majorly use HTML for presentation. And that was why everything we did last week was subjected on presentation. We're learning how to present elements on the web page. We're learning how to present text. We're learning how to present images. We're learning how to present lists. We learned how to present a whole lot of things. And that's why I recommend that video. If you have not watched that video, you need to watch that video before you dive right into this. So that is what HTML is. It's a building block of any web page at all. It is used for presentation. But when it comes to CSS, it is used for styling. It is used for the aesthetic part of the web. And that's why it's called cascading style sheets. It is really a style sheet. It is where you beautify your elements by adding all sort of colors, background images, all sort of things where you deal with the looks and feel, really. And that goes to the next point. CSS controls the look and feel of your web page. It contains the sites of your web page. Yeah. And that was why everything we did last week was just black and white. Yeah, it was just black and white. That was because CSS was not involved. But I'm sure this week the look and feel is going to be pumped up. Now CSS actually came to solve a problem with a particular version of HTML 3.2. Yeah, so HTML 3.2 brought in a feature where you could add some styling into your HTML. But the way it's been done then is those styling are added inside the HTML tag. For example, you can add width, you can add height, you can add alignment into your HTML tag. But it quickly became a problem, although it was revolutionary because, I mean, styling your HTML now makes the page looks very good, but it quickly became a problem because the file size now started bloating up. Yeah, because of the inline style that people had to add to their HTML. So instead of doing that, the developers came together and say, instead of adding these styles into our HTML tag, let's create another style sheets language, and let us use that to control the look and feel while we solely use HTML for presentation. That is what is called single responsibility in software engineering, singular responsibility of anything at all. It means one thing should be responsible for one thing. Yeah, so HTML should be responsible for presentation, while CSS should be responsible for styling. Not HTML responsible for presentation and responsible for styling. It doesn't work that way. Yeah. And that's the problem CSS came to solve, to handle the styling part of HTML. Till today is being maintained by a community called W3C and is also being developed by them. So, as last week, the tools that are needed is very simple. You need a web browser and you need a code editor as well. You need a web browser and code editor as well. For myself, I'm going to be using Chrome. You could use Firefox. I was told, and I've checked actually, the Firefox has a very great tooling for CSS in their inspect tool. But I think I'm satisfied with Chrome as well. It gives me almost same results. And I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code Editor. And if you do not have this tool, in my last video, I walked you through how to download this tool. So you could as well refer back to the last video and check how to download it. So, without any further ado, let's get started. So, I've opened up a project. If you do not know how to do this, again, I say you need to go to the last video to learn how to do this. Yeah, so all I did was to create a folder called Project CSS, and I opened that folder in my Visual Studio Code Editor. If you do not know how to do that, you can simply come up here and do open folder. After you've created the folder, just do your open folder. Or if there is an existing HTML file that you want to style, I'm sure that HTML file is going to be in a project. So you need to do open folder to pull out that HTML project and get it into Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to zoom up a bit so you can see my screen. So I've gone ahead to create an HTML file. You can easily do that with this particular control. Just click on it. You create a new file. And as I said last week, your HTML file must have an extension of .html. That's what makes it HTML really. So let's create our HTML. I'm sure by now you guys know how to do this. If you do not know how to do this, you need to go back to the HTML tutorial and learn it. So we're going to our body. Let's just have an H1. Welcome to CSS Course. I'm using Live Server here, so I also walked us through last week how to install Live Server. If you don't know how to do that, you could just come to your extension tab here, over here, an extension tab, and over here just type in live server. Yeah, just do live. This is this option. You're going to see an installation button. The reason why you see this is because I've installed it already. So you should see an installation button there. Just go ahead and install it. So I'm going to be opening this page with live server, and you see that. So welcome to CSS. So that is our HTML there. So we already have a ground, and notice that before we actually write anything CSS at all, there has to be HTML on ground. That is why we established last week that HTML is the building block, of any web page, and that's why we have HTML before we have anything at all. Now we want to look at how to add CSS to our HTML. That's really the reason we're here today. Now there are 3 different ways to add CSS to our HTML, and I'm going to walk you through all the 3 methods. We're going to look at the pros and we're going to look at the cons of all the 3 methods. Now let's look at the first method. The first method is what we call inline CSS. Inline CSS. And now the way inline CSS work is that we add the CSS directly to our HTML tag, HTML element. That's the way it works. And you can see this example over here. You can see that we are adding the styling into our P tag. This is a P tag, this is a paragraph tag. So we are adding a styling into that P tag. Don't worry, don't bother yourself about trying to wrap your head around how we write this styling. We're going to treat that in full details. Just the point I want you to take out here is that we are adding that style within this particular P tag, and that is what's called inline CSS. So when you see anything like this, you know this is a method of adding CSS to your HTML called inline pattern. Yeah. And the second pattern is the internal CSS. And before we go into the second pattern, you must understand why you should actually not use the inline CSS pattern. Because, I mean, in the first place, that was what brought about the problem that we tried to solve with CSS. Although it wasn't CSS they were adding then, they were just styling, but it was in form of attributes in a tag. So the major reason why CSS came in play was so that we could separate CSS from HTML. So now going into your tag and adding your CSS easily makes your code messed up. And that's why your code gets easily bloated up, because you've added a lot of inline. So imagine you have about 1,000 line of HTML, and in those 1,000 line of HTML, you had to style almost all your tags, all your HTML tag. It's going to get easily messed up and bloated up, and you don't want to do that. As a very good software engineer, you want to make sure your code is readable. You want to make sure your code is readable. You want to make sure your code can be read as a poet. Yeah, you want to make sure your code is readable. And it starts from this very basic. So if you understand how to write clean code, starting from this basic, I mean, it's the beginning of success, I tell you. Yeah. So that is why inline CSS is out of it. Yeah. Sometimes, yeah, there are exceptions. Sometimes when you want to style certain things and you feel it doesn't require you to do the other way, which I'm going to talk about, that's the other methods. Yeah. So say you want to add just one styling to a particular tag. Sometimes people would usually say, oh, you could just put it as inline. Yeah. And the reason why that is said is because you're not writing more than one style property. So for this particular styling now, the only thing you're styling in this P tag is color. So sometimes people can say, oh, okay, it's all right since it's just one. Yeah. Yeah, the truth is you can do this for one, But if you have any other tag outside of color and it's just one styling you want to add to it, then you do the same thing. Then you keep repeating the same thing. So it is better not to even go into that adventure at all in the first place, and use the other patterns, use the other methods that is encouraged. So inline CSS is not encouraged. The next is our internal CSS. The way we use internal CSS is by adding the style tag within a single HTML file. Now, the way this works is we simply add a style tag into our HTML file. I'm going to show you the way all this works practically. Yeah, I'm going to show you how it works. So that's the way internal CSS is. So in this case now, you're not adding it into the tag, but you are adding it into a particular section in your HTML file. You're adding it into a particular section within your HTML file. And even this is as good as it is compared to inline CSS, it is still discouraged, because again we say we want to encourage singular responsibility. An HTML file should only be responsible for presentation, for any presentation concerns, and a CSS file should only be responsible for styling concerns. So we should not have CSS inside our HTML. Do you get what I'm saying? So singular responsibility is what we look up to as a judge to know which pattern to go by. So internal CSS in itself, being a solution for inline CSS, is still not good enough and is hence discouraged. So the last one, which is the most preferred method, is your external CSS. So we create an external file that has the CSS extension. Any CSS file has the CSS extension. So we create an external file that has the CSS extension, and we link it up with our HTML. I'll show you how to do all that in our code. So let's get back to our code and let's look at the different method that we spoke about. So the first method we're going to look at is our inline. So how does inline work? How does inline work? So say for example, I want to style this H1. I can easily come here and say style, then add color and call it red. And can you see that now? Now this is what we call inline styling. Yeah. So I'm adding the style in between the H1 tag. This is inline styling. Yeah. And for external styling, I'm just going to leave this for those that are going to need it. So for external styling, what we do is we come to the head section and we use a tag called style. Then we now start selecting. I don't want to go into using CSS selectors now because I've not taught you that. But I just want to show you that this is the way external styling works. When we do CSS selectors, I'll come back to this. But this is the way internal styling works. This is the way internal styling works. And for external styling, what we simply do is to create another file. We create another CSS file and link it up, which is what we're going to be doing. But the next thing we need to look at now is the CSS syntax. How do you write CSS? That's the next thing we need to look at. Because once we are done knowing how to write, learning anything at all, you need to know what the syntax is. Yeah, you need to know how it is being written. Syntax is simply the language of communication. So we need to know how CSS communicates its language. Once we know that effectively, then we can use that to execute. Now, this is the way your CSS syntax works. Now, your CSS syntax has the first part that you would see is what we call the selectors. I'm going to talk about selectors. There are different ways to, and when we say selectors, actually, what we mean is CSS trying to make a reference to a particular HTML tag that is to be styled. Yeah. So if I have an H1 HTML tag and I want to style that H1, maybe I want to make the color red and I want to make the font size increase. Yeah. If I'm going to be styling that H1, I need to have a way. There has to be a way wherein CSS can target that particular H1 tag. Now, so that mechanism, that pattern that is used to target that HTML tag is what we call selectors. So selectors are the tools that we use for making reference to HTML tags that is to be styled. And that is why we have this over here. So to start off with writing your CSS, you start with the selector. And after this syntax, we are going to deep dive into the different ways to select. There are a ton of ways to select HTML tags that is to be styled in CSS. There are a ton of ways. We're going to be diving deep into that after now. So the first thing you start with is your selector. And you can see over here, I'm starting with my H1. That's my selector. Yeah. And the next thing you start with is these coily braces. This is what we call coily braces. Coily braces. Now, what is coily? And you can see that it has the opening part and it has the closing part. What these coily braces depict is boundary. So what we are saying in essence is everything we are going to be writing within these coily braces should only be applied to this particular H1 selector. So what we are saying in essence is every styling we're going to be writing within this boundary should only be applied to this element in HTML. So that means it's not going to be applied to the next element, to the neighboring element, to the parent element. It is only going to be applied to this particular H1 element. Yeah, it is only going to be applied to this particular H1 element. And that's how these guys work. That's how these guys work. So once we have this boundary with these coily braces, yeah, then in between, that is where we begin to write our CSS. That is where we begin to write our CSS. And you can see that writing your CSS is as easy as having your property and having your value. All CSS rules have property, value. For example, our property is color. So that means what we want to effect change upon is the color. Once we effect change upon the color and the value we are giving it, and notice that your value is in a double quotation symbol, or what you want to call the apostrophe symbol, whichever one works for you. Yeah, and you can see that the value over here is yellow. Yeah, so that is the way CSS works. That is the way CSS works. And the truth is, there are a ton of properties of CSS. We have font size, font weight. There are a ton of them. There are a ton of them that we can't even finish treating in this course. Yeah. But the more you practice, the more you learn, the more you know them. The more you practice, the more you learn, the more you know them. But we're going to the major essence of this course is to help you understand that heart, how to really write it and how to really use them, so that whenever you learn a new one, it is very easy for you to incorporate because you know the foundation already. So this is basically how you write your CSS. Now let's go to CSS selectors. As I said previously, selectors are selectors are used to make reference to your HTML tag. Selectors are used to make reference to your HTML tag. So you want to style a particular tag, let's say your paragraph tag. How do you target that paragraph tag from your CSS? That's what selector helps you to do. And I said there are different ways you can target an HTML tag. The first way is by tag name. So you can target an HTML tag by its tag name. And that's why you will notice that we used the H1 tag here. We use the H1. So we are targeting that particular tag by its tag name. And the tag name is called H1. You're going to see all this when we get started to writing code. But I just need you to understand this theoretical aspect. It is as important as writing the code itself. So first is by tag name, and the second is by class name. So we can also target an HTML tag using its class name. And I'll show you how to do that as well. And we can also target an HTML tag using an ID name. I will show you how to do that as well. Of these three methods, you would usually use method 2 the most. You would usually use method 2 the most. And the major reason why method 1 is really not in use is because I'll give you a scenario. In your typical HTML file, if let's say you want to style an H1, that particular H1 you want to style will definitely not be the only H1 in that HTML file. You're probably going to have like several counts of H1 tag in that HTML file. So notice that any style you give that H1 would apply to all the H1 in your file. That is why we really do not use tag name. And don't worry if all this I'm saying is abstract to you. You're going to see it practically. I'm going to show you right about now. Oh, okay. Slide gone bad. Let's go back to code. Okay, so let's say we have, I'm not going to erase this. I'm just going to leave it there because I'm going to be giving out this project file so you can make reference to it. So let's say we have a paragraph on H2 tag that says this is CSS. Now we have this CSS course. Now remember we said that we can write our styling within our style tag, and this particular method of writing CSS is called the internal CSS. So let's see how to write the internal CSS. The reason why I didn't write this, I didn't continue writing it, was because I needed to quickly show you the syntax of how to write CSS so that if I start writing it, it wouldn't look like magic to you. So remember we said the first thing to write is your selector. And we also said that selector can be done in 3 ways. We said you can select an HTML. And what are we selecting in this particular case? This is the guy we want to style. Yeah, this is the guy we want to style. So we need to select him and target him in our CSS just to be able to style him. Yeah, and notice that we are using the internal CSS method. This is not the method we are going to be using going forward, but I just need to show you how it works. Once I show you how this works, then I'll now go to the method we are going to be using continually for the continuation of this course, which is the external CSS. So I'm going to be targeting this element by its tag name. And what is its tag name? H2. So I'm going to be saying H2. And I open my curly braces. I open my curly brace. Can you see my curly brace? Then I press enter. So what enter does is it gives me room to write my CSS. And notice I said your CSS starts with your what? Your property and the value. The property and the value. So say for example, we want to give this particular h2 tag a color. So we can go ahead and say color. And this is why I love Visual Studio Code. You can see it gives you a whole lot of IntelliSense. It gives you help, and it also says gives you a guide of what you're trying to do. It says set the color of an element text. So with that already, you know what you're trying to do. You know where you're headed. So we can easily come here and do this, and do this, and then do this, and set the color. So let's say yellow. And okay, let's see why our friend is not working. Okay, so I figured out why this. So I figured out why this isn't working. It's because of what we added. So let's just do this, yeah, and that works. So we could go back to our yellow, and that works as well. Yellow is bad. Let's just go back to blue, and that works as well. So this is how to write your internal CSS, and we are not going to be using this method. I'm just going to leave a comment. Say internal CSS, and I'm going to comment this out. I'm also going to comment this out so you can have access to them. So the way we are going to be writing our CSS going forward is by using our external CSS. And that's what we're going to be doing right about now. So we're going to go into our project pane and click on a file, and you can call it any name. Actually, I'm going to be saying style.css. I'm going to be calling it style.css. Yeah. So this is where we're going to write in our CSS. Yeah. But our HTML currently does not know anything about this CSS file. It doesn't know anything about this CSS file. So we need to import our CSS file or make known to our HTML file that a particular CSS file exists for this HTML file. And the way we do that is by using a particular tag called link. So it's by using a link tag. If you do this, you can have link tag. And your link tag has a link tag in itself does not do anything. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. So if we come to our style.css and try to style our h2 like we did before, to say color, and let's say red, can you see that it doesn't work? So link on itself does not work. There has to be some property that we need to add to link to make it work. So the first is going to be rel, which is like relationship kind of thing. So ours is going to be style sheet because that's what we're trying to write. And the second is going to be href. So href is simply saying, give me a path to the name of your CSS file. So, and since my CSS file is in direct path with my HTML file, I can simply type out the name here and say CSS. And once I give it a save, you can see that immediately our CSS applied to our HTML here. And notice what we're trying to do here. We're trying to style the h2 and we're referencing by tag name. We're referencing by tag name. That's why you have this h2, and you have that same thing here as well. We are referencing this particular element by tag name, and that's why we have this result. So I'll just put a comment here and say, call this reference by tag name. Now, I'm going to tell you the disadvantage of referencing by tag name. So let's say, for example, I have a couple of H2s here as well. And this is I don't want to be colored. And we have another one. There are a bunch of angry H2s. I want to Now, if you notice that on saving this file, this particular H2 style, which is red, our intention was only to style this particular guy. But you can see that it applied to everything. And the reason why it applied to everything is because we are simply speaking English to our CSS. We said, oh CSS, get anything that has the H2 tag and apply red color to their text. And that's what CSS is doing. So, and it saw 3 H2 tags and it applied it to everything. So this is why most of the time referencing by tag name is not usually used. It is only used when you want to give the same styling to all instance of that particular tag name. If that's what you want to do, and that this works, you can easily reference by tag name. That works if that's what you want to do. Sorry. So let's go to the next one, referencing by class name, which is what we are going to be using. That's like the standard. That's what you would see many developers do as well. So referencing by tag name. So I'm going to style this as well. I'm going to comment. So some people might be wondering what comment is. So comment in programming is just a way of telling the compiler not to run this particular line of code. So you're just telling your compiler to skip. Your compiler is what executes your code. Yeah. So you're just telling your compiler to skip this particular line of code. Don't run it. But I don't want to erase it. That's just like the basic meaning of what comment does. So what we want to do now is to style only this particular guy. And we want to style it by using class name. Now, the way we go about this is this. When you want to style an H1 elements, not H1, could be H1, could be any tag at all. When you want to style any element, what you do is to give it a class attribute. And if you remember when we spoke about tags in our HTML course, we said tags can have attributes. So one of those attributes that you can give a tag is called the class name. So you can easily come here and say class. And you can give it a name. You can say header text. And there is actually a rule. There's no rule per se, but for me, I'm going to give you a rule. Because if you don't have any rule in writing these things, you can just go ahead and just name it anything. For example, you can come here and say lion. And the truth is, it actually still is going to work, because when we now come here and use lion, don't worry about this. I'm going to tell you what it is very soon. I just want to depict an example. You can see it's going to work. Yeah? But there are standards that you want to keep. And one of those standards is make sure that the class name you're giving any tag depicts the functionality of that tag. You want to write that down. I'll say that again. Make sure the class name you're giving any tag depicts the functionality of that particular tag. The reason why we do this is so that when anyone is going through your CSS style sheet and the person sees the type of naming you're giving your elements, the person at one go can be able to tell what that element does. Now, for this particular guy, we can simply say it's an header text. Now, by using this particular class name, header text, I'm coming to my HTML. Now, the way we reference by class name, we start by the dot notation. Dot notation. You start by the dot notation. Yeah? And you continue by writing your class name for that element. And ours here is header text. Let's go back again. So the first thing we did was to give the H2 elements a class attribute, and we gave it a value of header text. So what you want to do now in trying to reference this particular H2 tag is you start with your dot notation, and this is when you are referencing by class name. Referencing by ID is totally different. This is by class name. You give it a dot notation and you type in the name of the class you gave it. Mine is header text. And then you do your normal curly braces and then you start styling. That's all. It's as simple as that. And now you see that in this particular method, only the guy you needed to be styled gets styled, not everything. And the reason why that is because only this guy has this particular class. So it gives us a level of control on how to control our styling our elements. So if you want all of this H2 to also get this particular style, it is simple. All you need to do is to copy this particular style, this particular class. You can repeat the same thing. Yeah. My IntelliSense is becoming a bit clumsy now. So all you need to do is to give them the same class name. Once you give them the same class name, they would immediately take up the same shape. You can see this took the same color as this, and the same thing can be done to this as well. So this gives us a level of control of styling as compared to styling by this guy, wherein we have little or no control because it just does the whole styling for us. But this gives us a level of control. Now this is how you style by class name. And the last but not the least is styling by ID name. Now the way we do this is simply by giving our tag an ID property, an ID attribute. So you can easily come here and say ID, and the rule still applies. So let's call this sub header text. Now, if you notice the pattern by which I'm using to name this tag, this is a general programming methodology paradigm. When we want to name anything in programming, there are two ways you do your naming. Let me quickly introduce you to that. There are two ways you do your naming. Two ways. Now, most of the time, the reason why we teach this is because when you're giving names to anything at all in programming, most of the time you're going to be combining 2 to 3 words together. 2 to 3 words together. And that is why we teach this. Now, how do you combine 2 to 3 words together without making it look absurd? Now, the first way is what we call Camel Casing. The name using Camel Casing, and that's what I'm using here. Now, the way Camel Casing works is you start with a lowercase. So let's say, for example, I want to join header plus text. Yeah, header plus text. How do I do this in Camel Casing? How do I do this in Camel Casing? I'll start with a lowercase of the first guy, and the second guy is going to maintain its capital number, capital letter rather. Now this is Camel Casing, and if you notice, that's what I used here. That's what I used here. And for me, I've been programming for about 7 years now. Professionally for about 3 to 4 years now. I've stuck with Camel Casing. Yeah, Camel Casing, really. Camel Casing is what I use. The second way is by using underscore. So you can also do the same thing by doing header text. So whichever way you choose, so that means you can actually come here and do header text. But whichever way you choose, it depends on your preference. But make sure you name your elements using either of these two. I'll keep it there so you can make reference to it. And you can see that's what I'm using here as well. The first text, this is a combination of sub plus header plus text. Yeah, this is a combination. And I've said the first text is going to take a lowercase, while the other guys are going to maintain their casing. And that's how we achieve this. So by ID, let's go back to where we were before. Referencing by ID. We've treated referencing by class. Now, when you're referencing by ID and you want to target that element in your CSS file, instead of starting with dots, you start with dots when you're targeting a class name. But when you're targeting an ID, you start with a naira sign. That's what you want to call hash. You start with an hash. Yeah? And you type in your header text. So we can go ahead and give it color of, let's say, brown. Now you can see that change to brown. Yeah? You can see that change to brown. So this is how you style by ID. You start by giving the element an ID property, and you give it the value, and you go to your CSS and you use a prefix called hash. Then you type in the value of the ID you gave the tag. So most of the time you would find yourself using your class name. Most of the time we usually do not use IDs, and the reason why we don't use IDs is because most of the time your JavaScript is going to be using your IDs, because JavaScript also has to target your tag elements. Everything targets tag elements, manipulates tag elements. So your JavaScript also would want to target the tag elements. And that's why we do not use IDs. We reserve IDs for JavaScript and maintain classes for CSS. So most of the time we're going to be using classes. But I just need you to know that this is also a thing and it does exist. So yeah, that is how you do referencing, and this is how you continue to write your styles, your different various styles for your elements. So now we're using color here, and you can see that we are typing the value of the color directly. There are 3 ways you can add color to your HTML tag. Now you can either type the value of the color directly, or you use what we call color code. And if you just go online, you can see this is what I use myself. HTML W3C color picker, because you don't have to know color codes in your head. there are too many important things for you to know than to keep color code in your head. So you can come to, I'll drop this link in the description below, so you can always come here to use it. So what I just simply do is to select any color, and on selecting any color, it gives me the color code, and it also gives me the Rgba. This Rgba is also a way of setting your color. I'll show you. So I can easily come here and copy this color code and use this color code over here. Just drop it here. Now if I save my document, you should see this color apply to my edit text. So I see not applying. Let's see what the problem is. It's not applying. Okay. Stretch. So yeah, that's it. That's it. That's the way you add your color code to your tag. So notice that the first one we did was by adding the color directly. So you can either do that, you can either use this also. You can also use what we call your Rgba. Rgba is just a combination of colors called red, green, and blue. You can form any color by combining red, green, and blue. It is on that pattern that Rgba is formed. So for this same color also, I can get the Rgba value. The Rgba value is 2550255. So I can easily copy that and paste it here. And I terminate. Now this termination symbol is simply saying this is the end of this particular style that I'm doing. That's what it means. Why this particular symbol means this is the value. I'm proceeding to write the value. This is the property and this is the value. And when you're done specifying the value, you terminate, because you can also go to the next line and write another style. So that's why this termination is very important. So if we save this, let's use another color so you can see that it's worked. Okay, so 0255. Go ahead and save this. Now can you see that changed it immediately? So you can also go ahead to give background colors. So let's say we have let's say all these elements is in a div. By now I'm sure you know what a div is. So we want to reference this div in our CSS. The first thing I'll do is to give it a class, and I'll call it container. Call it container. Then I can come here and do container. Notice the way I started. I didn't start inside this and say container. No. As I said, you can see this. You can see this this boundary. You can see the line. The line is here. So this shows you that any style that comes in between this opening and closing curly braces is strictly for the header text. So if I want to style another tag, another element, I have to come to a new line, start with the dot notation, and write the name of the class, which is container. So I can give a background color, and I can make the background color black and terminate. Now you can see that it immediately turns everything inside this particular text, the container, to not visible. And the reason why the other texts are not visible is because the font color of those texts are black. That's why it's not visible. But this particular one is green, is blue rather. That's why you can see it. So why not change? Let's change the font of each of these text. So we can easily, now this is where you can use your tag name. So now say for example you want to change all of this text, you want to make them white. Yeah. So you can easily, and this does not, let's say this does not have a class, and this does not have this. So you can easily come here and say H2 color to be white. Now can you see that now? So it applied it to all of the H2s. So now we've looked at 3 ways to make selection. You make selection by tag name, by the particular tag name. You make selections by the class name, and you also make selections by the ID name. So now let's go further with selection. Let's go further with selectors. As I said, there are tons of ways to select elements in your HTML file. There are tons of ways. In CSS, there are tons of ways to select tags in your HTML file. So now let's see another problem. Let's create another problem here. Let's create another problem. So I'll do this for now. And now let's say we have another h1 tag above this div, h2 rather, that says welcome to my blog sites. And you know, by default, any text is going to be black by default. That's just the default browser style by default. So now in the so now in trying to make this particular guys, because we know they are black and they are inside this particular div, now because we want to make all of them become white, now we now go ahead to do what we did previously. Now I want you to watch this particular text. Now when we initialize this, now see what happened. Now you can see that even this particular guy turned white, although we had the intention to make them turn white, but because it's also an H2, it also turns white. But can we tell CSS that we only want the H2 within this div to turn white? Can we tell CSS that? Can we tell CSS that that's what we want? And how can we do that? Let's see. So we can easily come here. Instead of doing this, we can easily come here and you start with the parent tag. Now what we want to tell CSS is we only want the H2 within our container. We don't want it anywhere else. We only want the H2 within our container to be styled with a white color. So you start with that container, and then you give a space and you type in the reference, the selector. And notice that we are using tag name as the selector. So I'm using my H2. Then I can now come and say color is white. Now look at that now. So what this is saying is saying target H2 that is only within this container. Anything outside that container is not your problem. Do you get what I'm saying now? Anything outside the container is not your problem. So only targets the H2 within the container. That's another way to do a selection. So I would advise you to go to W3 School. Is a very rich site for learning CSS. It's a very rich site. You can see all they have here. It's a very rich site. So it's still W3 School. I would advise you to go to W3 School. I'll drop the link to all this in the description below. School CSS Selector. So it really shows you all manner of selection, making selections with CSS. Yeah. So you can see the one we've treated by tag name, and we've treated by ID, selection by ID. You can see that here. We've treated selection by class name. And now there are still a ton of ways to select. This is the one we just treated. So there's still a ton of ways to select. You can see all this. Yeah. So I'll need you to come here and also give it a read. But this is the major one that you need. What I'm teaching you now is not all. This is just what I'm trying to make you see. This is not all, but this is good for you to start off with. So that's that about selection of tag name. And we can do different things, guys. We can do different things. We can say, okay, so we want this particular guy to increase in size a bit. So we can give it its own class and say header text is a real header text. And now you can see immediately it turned to blue. And the reason why that is because we have our header text with an existing style already. Our color should be blue, but we don't want that. What we want to increase the size, the font size. So we can easily come to CSS and you can see all styling that has to do with fonts. Such a beautiful editor, such a beautiful editor. So we can come here and now give it a value and say, let's say 40 pixels. Now, CSS has units, what we call units. Yeah. Pixel, which the short form is px, is a unit that you would usually use for CSS. Yeah. So that is just like when you have centimeter, or when you have millimeter, when you have inch. But for CSS, it is pixel. We have pixels, we have EM, we have rem, we have percentage. But the ones you would usually use is your percentage and pixels, px. So for this particular case, we are using our px. And when we save, you can see our text increase in size. You can see it increase in size. Now, let's say we want this text to be at the middle. We want it to be in the center of this page. What do? We can use text align. Now look at all the styling with text. So you can say text align. Text align is a property that helps you set the alignment of your text. So you can see we have center, we have end, we have justify. You can play around with all these things. You can play around. The reason why I know these properties is because I've used them over time. I've used them over time. So for you to be able to know as much property as possible, it takes practice, it takes a lot of study, and it takes a lot of rehearsals. So you need to work on projects and do research as well. W3 Schools is a site that I cannot emphasize enough. Yeah, I cannot emphasize enough. It's like a reference site when it comes to CSS. So I'm going to drop the description, the link in the description below, so you can go there to learn further. That's when you're done with this particular course, you can go there to learn further. So text align, I'm going to put this alignment at the center. Now you can see my text is at the center of the page. So yeah, that's what you can do with that. And now the next thing we're going to be treating is a concept called box model in CSS. Now there is a concept of margin and padding, and that concept makes a lot of developers confused, and I'm going to attempt to explain the concept of margin and padding. Margin and padding is a way to add spacing both of them is a way to add spacing to your tag elements, to your HTML elements. It's just a way to add spacing. Now, looking at this is the content of your HTML element, and this is your element. This is your element. The guy in blue dotted dash is your element, and around your element are your borders. So that's the border. That's the border line of your element, and this is the content. Whatever this content is, we don't care. So, for example, if you look at our web page, let's translate this on our web page. Now, this our div is the element. Now, this course content, this individual text is the content inside the element. Can you see that now? It's the content inside the element, but this div is our element. Now, what is padding? A padding is simply the space between your content and your elements. That's what padding is. That's what padding is. The space between your content and your elements. That's the internal space between your content and your elements. That's what padding is. And you see this guy currently. You see the way it is stocked to its parent div. See the way this guy is also stocked. It's stocked at the left, bottom, right, and center. So what we're going to do now is to add padding. And then you would understand what I mean when I say your padding is the space between your content and the elements. So if I add padding to our container, don't forget that this div is already given a class called container. You can see it here, class called container. So if I come over here and give it a padding of, let's say, 30 pixels, I want you to notice what is going to happen. Let me use 50 pixels so it's much more noticeable. Can you see that now? So I said your padding is the space between your content, which is this guys inside here, yeah, and your elements, which is this div. Now you can see this space. This space is what we call padding, and you can see that it applied the space all around. Yeah, it applied the space all around. This is what we call padding, the space between your content and your elements. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. Yeah, the space between your what? Your content and your elements is what's called padding. Yeah. And when we talk about margin, we're talking about the space between your not content now, your element and the outside world. The space between your elements and the outside world. The outside world can be anything. The outside world can be the element parents, can be the browser window, can be anything. Yeah. So if I give this guy a margin now, you will see what I'm talking about. So let me also give this guy a margin of 100 pixel. So it's noticeable. Can you see it now? Can you see this space? The space between the outside world and the div is what we call margin. Can you see it now? Look at this space. The space between the outside world and the div is what's called margin. Yeah. But the space between the element and its content, is internal world, is what we call padding. Yeah. So I hope that's understandable, and that's simple enough to grasp. Now the next thing I want to show you is what you see here. Now we have top, we have right, we have bottom, and we have left. That means you can be specific. You can be specific with writing your padding. You might want to give just padding, just top padding, padding top. You might want to give just padding right. You might want to give just padding bottom, or you might want to give just padding left. Yeah. And okay, let's just take it gently. Let's take it gently. So let's start with padding. There are about three different ways you can write padding. Now, if you give your padding one, now if you do this, if you give your padding one value, what you are simply saying in CSS is apply this value to the top, right, bottom, and left. So you're saying apply this 50 pixels to all this position. That's what you're saying. That's what you're saying in essence. Apply 50 pixels to the top, right, bottom, and left. That's the pattern. Don't forget top, right, bottom, and left. That's what you're saying by giving it just 50 pixels. Now you can also come and say padding is 20 pixel, 50 pixel. This is now two value. You're giving it two value. Now what this two value means is this. You're saying give 30 pixel to my top and bottom, but give 50 pixel to my left and right. That's what you're saying. That's what you're saying with two values. Yeah, with two values. You're saying this first should be applied to the top and bottom, and this second should be applied to the left and right. That's what you're saying. So it's as simple as that. So if we do that, let's comment out this and let's see the effect. Sorry. Now you can see, let's make it noticeable. So for top and bottom, I'll give it just 5 so you can notice it. Now you can see top and bottom takes 5 pixel padding, while the left and right, the reason why the right takes this long space is because of the length of the content. So if we make the content lengthy enough, you can see, you'll be able to see the effects. Okay, so now you can see the effect. Yeah, so it's giving it 50 pixels, 50 pixels left, 50 pixel right. Yeah, we can make it much noticeable by saying 200 pixel. Now you can see that now 200 pixel left, 200 pixel right. But when it comes to top and bottom, is what? 5 pixel top and 5 pixel bottom. That's what we have here. That's what we have here. 5 pixel top, 5 pixel bottom. So all this particular pattern depends on the scenario you find yourself. You might find yourself in a scenario whereby you want the top and bottom to have the same value and you want the left and right to have the same value. That's where you use this scenario. Do you understand? Yeah, that's where you use this scenario. So we have 200 here. Now, the second one I'm going to talk about, let me take away anything margin for now, is 4 value. You can give your padding 4 values. Now you can say 10 pixel, 40, 50 pixel. Now this value of pixel solely depends on you. You can give it anything. Depends on what you're trying to build. I'm just explaining. Now when you give your pixel 4 values, what you are saying is the first, which is your 10 pixel. You are saying your 10 pixel should apply to the top. Now it follows an anti-clockwise pattern. Yeah. So it starts from here and it goes this way. So what you're saying is that your 10 pixel should go to the top and your 50 pixel should go to your right and your 80 pixel should go to your bottom and your 200 pixel should go to your left. That's what you're saying here, because this is the pattern it follows. It starts from top and it goes to right, it goes to bottom and it comes to left. Don't forget, top, right, bottom, left, top, right, bottom, left, top, right, bottom, left. You can say that like 20 times so you can stick. Top, right, bottom, left. So if you're giving it 4 value, you're saying this is for top, this is for right, this is for bottom, and this is for left. Let's save this so you can see the effect. Now you can see it. The top takes 10 pixel. The right takes 80 pixel. The bottom, 50 pixel rather. The bottom takes 80 pixel. And the left takes 200. Yeah, so that's the way this particular pattern works. So all this pattern is still depending on what you want to do. This is just giving you a wide variation of options. It's giving you wide variation of options depending on what you intend to achieve. Do you understand now? Just depend on what you're trying to achieve. Yeah. Now you can also go specific. You can be specific to say, okay, this time around, I'm not doing a joint work. You can be specific to give specific values. Yeah. So you can come here and say padding top. So you can say padding top. Let's say you just want to give just the top a padding. Padding top, let's say 100 pixel. Now you can see at our padding top here, everything is just stuck together. But when we save this style, you can see it now. Yeah. So it's applying only to top. Only to top. So here we are being specific. So you can also say padding. Yes, you guessed it. Padding right. You can say 100 pixels as well. Now you can see that shifts. That shifts. What is padding? Padding is the space between the content and the elements. The content and the elements. You can see that at work. Now we can also go ahead to specify padding bottom. Now it can come in any order. This can come in any order. Order does not matter. I can put padding top, padding bottom at the top. Because order doesn't matter here. This is where order matters when you're doing this. This is where order matters. If you put this 10 pixel and put it here, it's going to be applied to the left. 10 pixel is going to apply to the left because this is top, right, bottom, and left. So this is where order matters. But in this case, order does not matter. So I can come here and say 200 pixel and terminate. And notice that all these styles that I've been writing is between these particular curly braces. And that is why they are all applying to the container elements. It's applying to the container elements. So these are just the things that you should note. So if I say padding bottom 200 pixel, notice that before I save, I've not saved. Before I save, the whole thing was stuck together. So once I give it a save now, you can see now. You can see you gave it a 200 pixel padding at the bottom. That's what you have here. That might be too much. Let's just say 100. So you can say that's 100. Now the one that we've not given the padding, that's why it's still stuck here, is your left. So we can also easily say padding left and say 100 pixel. And you can say that. So what we did now, is to give individual styles. So you can use this. You can use this particular pattern. You can use any pattern you like. You can use any pattern you like. You can apply to every one of them at the same time. You can apply to top and bottom, left and right. You can apply it to them individually here, and you can be specific. Most of the time you use this when you want to give specific value. You don't want it to apply to all. So let's say I only want to pad my bottom or my top. That's when I use this. Yeah. So I'm going to comment this out as well. And let's see margin at work. Now, everything that I've said for padding also applies for margin. Everything applies for margin. The same thing applies for margin. So I'm just going to leave this particular one because I want it to apply to all of them. All. So everything applies to margin as well. So if I come down here and say margin 200 pixel. Now I want you to notice the change. Now currently you can see that this our container is so close to our page. It's so close to the window elements. That's what you want to call it, window elements. Let's remove this welcome to my site. That's why it's not close to the top. But when we remove this welcome to my site, you'll see how close it is to the top. Now can you see that? So it's so close to the page. And we said margin is what? Margin is the space between the outside world and your elements. So this outside world and your elements is the margin. But your inside world, that's your element and its content, the space between them is the padding, and we've dealt with that extensively. Now let's deal with padding. Now when we save this, see what happens. Let's use 100 so it's not absurd. Now can you see what happens? So it gives the element 100 pixels of margin at the top, 100 pixels of margin at the right, 100 pixels of margin at the bottom, and 100 pixels of margin at the left. Why did he apply all the same pixels of margin to all corners, all direction? It is because we specified just a singular value. And that was the same thing that happened for padding as well. Yeah, because we specified a singular value, and I'm just going to be copying this comment and I'm going to be putting it here. The reason why I'm making all this available is so that if you want to practice with this code base or make reference to it in while watching or after now, you can have access to them. So we have that. So you can also do the same thing that we've done previously with margin, with padding rather. So you can say margin 30 pixel and 100 pixel. You guessed right. You guessed what this is going to do. It's just the exact thing this is doing. The exact thing this is doing is what's going to do. It is going to give to the top and bottom 30 pixel and to the left and right 100 pixel. So let's correct that. 30 pixel top and bottom and left and right 100 pixel. Now when you save that, you can easily see that, yeah, this is top and bottom 30 pixel. Now somebody can ask a question that, but this bottom doesn't look like 30 pixel. Yeah, this is the remaining space. This is the remaining space of your web page. Yeah, is the reason why this is not looking like 30 pixel is because your div is not long enough, or it's not big enough to take the remaining space. So if I add more content more H2 guys. Just copy, and I don't want to have to scroll, so I'll just copy one just to fill up the space. You see what I'm saying? So can you see now? So now that it has filled up the space, can you see now? So you can see the 30 pixel. You can see the 30 pixel apply here, and you can see the 30 pixel apply here also. So it's applying at the top and bottom 30 pixel, but at the left and right, you can see 100 pixel left and right. The same thing applies as well, guys. The same thing applies. So let's look at the next one. Margin with 4 values now, guys. 4 values. 50 pixel, 80 pixel, 150 pixel. And you guessed right. You know what this is going to do already. So what it's going to do, let's save, give it a save. Now you can see it. You can see. So what it did was it gave our top, margin top. It gave our top 30 pixels. It gave our right 50 pixels. It gave our bottom 80 pixels. And it gave our left 150 pixel. 150 pixel. So yeah, that's that about margin. And you can also do the same thing. You can also be specific for margin as well. You can be specific. So you can say margin top. You can say margin top equals to 100 pixels. In this case, we are only applying it to margin top. And instead, that moved the div down a bit. So it gave us spacing, a bit of spacing up here. So you can also say, but you can see our left and right and bottom, the whole thing is still looks clumsy. So you can say margin right as 100 pixel as well. And when you save that, you can see it now. You can see top is good, right is good, because now we're being specific. You get what I'm saying? So we have margin bottom as well as another 100 pixel. Now look at it before we save. You can't even see anything beneath it because you can't scroll any longer. But when we save, it gives it space between the element and the outside world. So the last, which is your margin left, we have 100 pixel. And when you save also, yeah. So we can be specific and you can be general in your approach. You can be general in your approach, guys. This is the way margin and padding work. I'm sure you fully understand margin and padding now. I'm sure you fully understand margin and padding now. This is where margin and padding works. So the next thing we're going to be looking at, guys, is layouts. How do we make layouts? How do we arrange elements side by side with each other? How do we make those beautiful layouts that you see? Because basically every of your web page is just a layout drawn. It's just a drawn layout. Yeah, it's just a drawn layout with different sections, different columns, and all. It's just a drawn layout. So that's what we're going to be looking at now. And we're going to be using something called Flexbox. We're going to be using Flexbox. I'm going to be teaching you about Flexbox. Flexbox is simply a layout model with CSS. Back in the days, table was the order of the day for doing your layouts. When you have your navigation, your sidebar, your section, your article, and your footer. Back in the days, you would usually use tables to achieve all of those things. But currently, we use Flexbox. And there is also another one called Grid, but that's for large scale. You really might not need that now. So your Flexbox is good enough. It gives you very good CSS APIs to make layouting very easy. And I'm going to be teaching you everything about Flexbox, how it works, and how we are able to use that to work. So I'm going to comment out all this that I've done, just so you can have a copy and we can have a fresh page. I'm also going to comment out all this. I want us to have a fresh page. Okay. Flexbox. Flexbox is one of the most important concepts you need to understand. Once you understand that, you're good to go. So we're going to have 3 sets of divs here. We're going to make 3 sets of divs. I'm going to make the first one. So the first one is going to act as a container. Now you already understand what I'm doing by giving it a class. You know what I'm doing already. So this is going to be a container. And this container is going to contain 3 different divs. And these 3 different divs are going to have, I'm just going to repeat it. I'm lazy. Just copy and paste 3 times. Yes. So I'm going to style I want to style all the divs inside the container. All the divs inside the container. So I'm going to come here and target the container. You know what the container is already. You know the container is a class of class name container. So I can come here and do a dot and the class name. And now, because I want to target all the div inside the container, I can easily give it a space and type in div. Now, this is going to affect all the div inside the container. If there's any, it doesn't concern this particular selector about any other div outside of the one in the container. Whatever div is outside of the container is not concerned by this particular selector. Every style within these curly braces is only going to be applied to all the divs within this container. So I hope you understand that. So another thing I skipped in this particular portion is border, which we're going to say now. So I'm going to give it a border. Now, the same way you have margin, you have padding, you also have border. So this is like your border top, this is your border right, this is your bottom border, and this is your left border. So we can do the same thing for your for border as well. So border takes 3 different value. When you want to use border, it takes 3 different value. Yeah. So it takes the thickness. Let me put this in the comments. So you specify the thickness first, the thickness of your border, and you specify the type of your border, and you specify the color of your border. This particular one is a required value, but all of these ones are not required. They are not required. And when I say this is required, it means even if you're not going to put anything as a value, you need to put the thickness. So for example, if I come here and put 10 pixels, that means I'm saying I want my border to be 10 pixels thick. Now if I save this, it should apply to everything. Yeah, let's see what's wrong now. The container. Did I spell my container wrongly? Okay, guys, I just needed to refresh. So it was my live server that wasn't picking up the signal. So I just needed to do a refresh. So 10 pixel tick. I think I need to do my refresh again. Now when you over so you have to specify the thickness, you have to specify the type of border you want, and you also have to specify the color. Now these are the properties that you give your border. So I've specified the thickness here. I have to specify the type. So this can be solid. This can be, I think we have dashed. Yeah, we have dashed. And I think we have dotted as well. Yeah, so we have solid, we have dashed, we have dotted. And I'm going to use, let's start with dotted to see what it looks like. And by default, if you don't specify the color, it is going to be black. Now you can see what dotted looks like. So it's giving each of the div. Let's use just a div to just drive on what border looks like first. So you can see that. So it's giving the border a dotted border. You can see a dotted border. Yeah. So let's use dashed. You see a dashed border. Let's use solid. So that's what it is. So for the color, you can specify any other color. Can specify any other color. So yeah, I'm using a blue color. You can see that. Yeah. So that's the way border works. And you can also be specific with giving borders as well. So you can say border top. So you might as well want to give just border top 10 pixel, say dashed brown. Can you say it? So it applied it to the top alone. You can say just the left, apply to the left alone. You can say just the right alone, and you can as well say just bottom. So all of these concepts applies, guys. All of this concept applies in the same manner and the same approach. So yeah, let's go back to where we were. So I'm going to give all of this guy 5 pixel border. I want the border to be black. I don't mind. That's what we have. Let's make it a little bit less thick. Just 2 pixels, fine. 2 pixels. That's what we have. So this is what we have, and notice that all of this is within our container. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give each of the div, I'm going to give them a margin bottom. I'm sure now you know what margin bottom is. I'm going to give them a margin bottom, and I told you that margin is the space between the particular element and its outside world. Now, currently, you can see that, look at the first element. The first element does not have any space between its bottom and the outside world. And that's why this second element is so close to it, because there's no space. And the same applies to the second element also. So if we give them a margin bottom, and notice that margin gives space between the element and its outside world. So if I target the margin bottom, I should be able to provide this spacing. So if I say 20 pixel, and note that this applies to all the div. Once I save, you can see that now. So it gives this 20 pixel between its margin, between its bottom and the outside world. 20 pixel between its bottom and the outside world, and this guy as well. So yeah, so that's that. Now, if I want to use Flexbox, if I want to use Flexbox for this container, the first thing I do is to apply this display property. Now the display property goes to to apply Flexbox. Actually, there are some properties that you have to add to the items within the container, and there are some properties that you have to add on the container itself. So one of the property you have to add to the container itself is the display property. So I have to go to the container itself, I have to target the container itself and add a display property. For the display property, I would add flex. Say flex. You can see that immediately they turned in side by side with each other. For you to be able to notice that change, let me go back. I'll add numbers. So you can 2, 3. Oh, so someone might be asking how I generated this particular content. This content is just a dummy content that Visual Studio Code, that's the code editor I use, gives you. So once I just do lorem, once I type lorem and press tab, it completes it for me, because it knows that I need a dummy content. So it's just a dummy content. So you can add anything, it doesn't matter. So save here. Now you can see all these guys side by side. You can see all these guys here. So I can do flex. Now you can see adding that display flex. Now by default, the display of any elements in HTML is block. The display of any elements in HTML is block. If I do display block, you can see that it gives me the previous behavior that it was before. It gives me the previous behavior. That's display block. And that's the default. So even if I remove this display block, it still gives me that behavior. So by default, every element is placed on the web page in a block manner. And when an element is placed in a block manner, what it means is that the element takes 100% width of its parent. 100% width. That's why you can see that this particular first div took 100% width. And because it is taking 100% width, there is no avenue for this second div to stand side by side with it. Because even this second width is taking 100% width. I think to be able to explain this, I need to use some kind of whiteboard. Okay. So let's say, for example, this is your web page, yeah? This is your web page, for example. This is your web page, yeah? every element, so if I add a div like I already did, every element takes 100% of their parent elements. That is what display blocks does. So when an element is set to display block, what it does is it fills its parent elements. It fills its parent elements. And that's why when we had 3 elements here, you can see it filled their parent elements because by default they are all display block. Do you get what I'm saying? So what display flex now does is display flex takes away that block boundary, that block barrier, and make them stand side by side with each other. And that's what it did to the contents of this particular container. So we can come and set display flex, and you can see that. You can see that right there, display flex. That's what it does. Yeah. So we also have what we call the flex property. So to use that flex property, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give each of this div a class. So let me call this box1. I can call this box2. And I can call this box3. So the reason why I'm now giving them individual class name is because now I want to target individual divs. When I wanted to give them a general style, I just used this. I used this because this styling should apply to all the divs. But now that I want to target them individually, I'm now giving them individual class name. So you should note that. So if I'm targeting box1, some style to be here, box2 to be here as well, box3 to be here as well. So if I can come here and say flex, can give them flex property, flex of 1. Flex of 1 and flex of 1. Now you can see giving each and every one of them the same flex amount gives them the same width with each other. So let's say, for example, I want to make this one, I want to make the width of this one much more than the width of the rest. All I just need to do is to increase its flex property so I can make it 2. So you can see now making it 2, so it's taking like half of the whole container and it's telling the rest to share 1 with each other. So this is like the beauty of Flexbox. This is what it helps you do. Yeah, this is what it helps you do. Back in the days, you would have to use float. Now that's why I'm not even introducing you to float, because float is not something you should do at all. This is much more responsive and advisable to use. So you can also give it 3. If you make it 3, you can say it keeps going, make it 5, it keeps going thinner. So you can play around with it and see what it gives you. Also, you can play around with the order. Now, if you want this third div to be the first and this first one to be the last, yeah, you don't need to go to your HTML and copy and paste. Copy this one, paste it here, and copy this particular one. Copy this particular one and paste it at the last. You don't need to do that. With Flexbox, you can also use a property called order. So I can set the order of this guy and make it the 3rd. I can make this box2 retain its own order, which is the 2nd, and I can make box3 the 1st. And when we do a save, you can see that now box 3 now becomes the first, and box 1 now becomes the last. So you can also do that. And now you can also set what we call flex direction. Your flex direction can be a row and can be a colon. By default, your flex direction is a row. That's if you don't set that property. If you don't set it, and that's why we have it here. You can see that our guys are aligned in a row format. They are aligned in a row format. You can also make them align in a column format. Now, that flex direction property is usually set on the container. Note, guys, there are some properties when you're doing Flexbox, when you're trying to create layouts. There are some properties you set on the container, and there are some properties you set in the item itself. You get what I'm saying? There's some properties you set on the container, and there's some properties you set in the item itself. Now, this particular property, which is called flex direction, is what you should set in the container. So you can come here and say flex direction. So if you say row, by default, it maintains the row. Let's remove the order property. I'll just comment it out. So they go back to the same order. Now you can also say row reversed. Row reversed is going to achieve what we did with order. Can you see it's reversed the row? So can you see these beautiful things that these things are? These properties rather and values are helping you do. The Flexbox is helping you do. So yeah, and we can also say colon. Now colon is going to give us the initial look and feel, because it's not going to arrange its column. You can also do colon reverse, so you can see that the third is going to, yeah. So but what we want is the row. Don't worry, guys, at the end of the day we are going to build our blog again. The last blog we built with HTML that looked very whack, we're going to build it again with the combination of now HTML and CSS to make the whole thing look nice and dandy. So now let's give each of this block some width. Let's give them some width. So let's say we want each of, now I'm going to put that particular property here because I want this particular property to apply to all my div. Sure you understand that now. So I'm going to give it 20%. 20%. Now I'll advise you guys, when you're giving width, use percentage. Now the reason why you should use percentage is so that when your device is being shrinked, yeah, it can maintain the percentage, that percentage of the same screen size, so that if your user is checking out your website on their mobile device, it's still going to take 20% of that mobile screen. If it's on a desktop screen, it's going to take 20% of that desktop screen. But if you specify pixels, that's not going to be the case, and you're going to have very fluffy behavior. So when you're specifying things like width, you should use percentage. And if you're not going to be using percentage, you can use VW rather. That's view width and view height, which is not something I want to introduce to you now. I can make a separate video that talks about that. But for now, you can use percentage. So we're going to give them 20% each. And okay, so my 20% is now applying to them. I want to assume that it is because I set this flex property. Yes. So that was because I have flex property on them, because flex will force them to take the whole of the page. So let me give 20%. So this 20%. Now we also have what we call justify content. justify content. What justify content does is that it helps us arrange our items within each other. Yeah. When I use it now, you see justify content. Now, by default, your justify content takes start, flex start. And that's why you see that our elements are starting, are piling up together at the start position of your web page, because by default it takes flex start. So if I come here and do flex start, nothing changes. But also note that we have flex end. You see what flex end does. Oh, sorry guys, I made a mistake. So your justify content should be applied to the container, not the div. Should be applied to the container. That's why we're having that issue. So justify content should be applied to container. So by default it's flex start. So when we do flex end, you see what we have. Can you see moved to the end? That's flex end. But there are three most important that you're going to be using. It's called space around, space evenly, and space between. Whichever one works for you is what you use. So we have space around. Can you see that? Beautiful. We have space between. You can see that. And we have space evenly. Yeah, so whichever one works for you is what you're going to use. I'm going to duplicate this and put all of those property and comment them out. So we have space around, we have space between, and we have space evenly. So whichever one works for you is what you use. Also for flex direction, we have flex row and flex column. Comment it out. So whichever one works for you guys is what you use. And for width, actually, when we talk Flexbox language, we actually do not give our elements width, although they do the same thing. But speaking the Flexbox language, you use what we call flex basis. Flex basis. It does the same thing, but this is the much more appropriate way of attacking that. Yeah, so guys, this is how we do layout when it comes to CSS. So what we're going to do now is we're going to combine all that we have learnt, and we're going to use it to build a blog. We're going to build a blog from ground up with all that we have learnt. So let's prepare the ground for our blog. Why not? Just want to make sure that all this data is kept so we don't lose any of them, and you can have something to make reference to. So when you want to use them, you can just copy and paste them out, or you remove these symbols, these comment symbols, so you can use them. So yeah, let's build our blog. So I'm going to open a new page for our blog. I'm going to be using a new page. So I'm going to call it blog.html. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open a folder for all my style sheets. So I'm going to move this guy into this folder for my CSS. So that folder is going to contain all my CSS. So even for my blog, I'm going to create another CSS file for my blog, CSS. Now this is going to break when you do this and you apply, if you apply your CSS here, it's going to break because this is not going to be a valid path for your CSS because now your CSS is inside a folder. So to target the CSS inside your folder, you have to use a double dot and slash. What the double dot and slash would help you to do is to move out of your folder. But currently we are not in a folder, so we don't need double dot and slash. Actually, you just need a single dot and slash. So a single dot and slash is going to list out all the items in that particular folder that you're in. So we can go into our style folder. So go into our style folder and we'll pick out our style.css. So that way we have a valid CSS for our index so it doesn't break. Guys, if you have any question at all, any question, just leave it in the comment below. I'm going to respond to you as soon as possible. So let's start up with our blogs, guys. Let's code along. So we have title, my sign code, farm, blog. Oh, that was a mistake, guys. Should have our head first. Have this. And now let's also do our link. Let's make our link. So you have to do your rel first, style sheets, and we have our href. We have to go into our style folder and pick out our blog.css. No, we're not using style.css. Blog.css. That's good and dandy. So let's open this with live server. Okay, so we're good. So we need an image, guys. We need an image. So I'm also going to create another folder. Now, when you want to create another folder, make sure to click on any empty space outside. If you click on this and create a folder, it's going to create a folder inside of that part you currently clicked on. So you have to click on an empty space outside and create a folder. So you can create a folder outside of the parts. So I'm going to call this images. So that's where I'm going to store all my image. So let's look for an image file. Yeah, so we're going to use the previous image. So I'm just going to drag it into that folder, and I'm going to rename it and call it logo.png. That's good. So I'm going to bring in my image. I'm just going to close in this tab. You can do this with Ctrl B, open and close, Ctrl B. I'm going to bring in my image. Source of my image is in my images, and Visual Studio is good enough to help you show the path completely. So I'm going to name this logo. So I'm sure this is going to be very big. You can see this, very big, huge and massive. So the last time when we wanted to contain this with HTML, we had to use we had to use this, and I told you not to do it. So this time around we are going to be using CSS. So we are going to give our image a class property, and we're going to name it logo. Remember, guys, remember the rules. You must give an equivalent name according to the functionality of the tag. So I'm giving this logo because this image is actually my logo. Yeah, so that's why I'm giving it a name called logo. So I can easily save this and go into my, just going to close this. I'm going to go into my CSS and target that logo and do a dot. So now I can control the width of my image. The width, that's the size of my image from here. So I'm just going to make it 10%. Can you see that now? So 10% or 20%. I'm actually not going to use percentage because the reason why I'm not going to use percentage is because I don't want my image to increase as the size of the screen increases. So I'm just going to give a stable value. So let's say 50 pixels. Let's try 80. Yeah, so 80 is good. 80 is good. 80 is good. So that's my logo. And after my logo, I'm going to make I'm now going to make a div. I'm going to make a div, and that div is going to just serve as a wrapper. That's just where I'll put all my content. So I'm going to start with an heading text. So my heading text is going to say Zion Code Farm blog site. Now, so I want this guy to be in the middle. Yeah, so how do I achieve that? Guys? There are two ways you can achieve it. And there's one thing I forgot to say, actually. Let me say it now that I remember. There are many ways to achieve the same thing in CSS. So you don't have to be perplexed by wanting to use someone's pattern. You can achieve the same thing. So for example, I can either come and give this guy a class, target it directly, or I just come and say in my wrapper, give me my H1 inside my wrapper, because that's likely going to be the only H1 I'm going to have in that wrapper. So I'm just going to say now text align, because I want it to align to the center. So text align center. So you can see it, guys. And I also want to increase the font size. So I'm going to say font size of 30 pixels. Let's try 50. Okay, I think that's good enough. Let's leave it at 40. And we can also make it bold. Font weight, you can see different value for your font weight, so you can make it bold if you will. So yeah, that's fine for me. I think I'll make it a bit smaller, say 35. Okay, so that's enough for me. So I'm also going to have a section inside my wrapper, and this section is going to undo all my blog posts. So all my blog posts is going to be an article. Each of my blog posts is going to be an article, and every article should contain a title. So title is going to be H1. So this is going to be like the title of my blog post, and so I can call this HTML course released. That's the title of my blog post. And I also want to have an author, so I can use the small tag. So I want to have an author. I can use the small tag to make an author. Let's see, Simon Lloyd. And now I can have I can have a p tag that houses the content. I'm going to do my lorem magic again. Lorem. So it's going to give me some content. So this is like a blog post. So I can give this a class. And call it blog posts. So every blog post is going to take this class. So I'm just going to repeat this article. Repeat this article 3 times. So we have it 3 times. And this is going to be CSS course released. And CSS course released. That's code. Hackathon. So every blog post has that property called blog post. So, and it is all in a section. So I can make this also a class. So, and I can call it blog container. You can see my choice of classes. I'm making it in such a way that if somebody that doesn't know about code come to my HTML, it can easily read these class names and know what they're doing. Do you understand what I'm saying? So this is what I want to do, guys. I want to make it such that each blog post, I can have 3 blog posts contained in this place. 3 blog posts contained in this place. And I'm going to make it a full size like this, full screen. Yeah. So I can come here and make my blog container a flex. So I'm going to come and say display. I don't want to use autocomplete so that you guys can understand what I'm doing. So I'm going to say display flex. Can you see that, guys? Automatically, the blog posts are beginning to take shape. Automatically, and it's doing that automatically. They are beginning to take shape. And now what I want to do is I want to give each of the blog posts a kind of border or a kind of raise. And I can achieve that with a property called box shadow. Box shadow. So let's do that also. So I know all of my blog posts as a single property, single class name called blog post. So I know if I put any style inside this particular boundary, it should apply to all of my blog posts because all of my blog posts has that class name on them. So I can give them what we call box shadow. Now box shadow takes about 5 parameters. Yeah. So it takes the parameter of your box shadow that you want to give. Your box shadow is just, as the name implies, a shadow on the box. That's just what it is. Yeah. So you have to specify the thickness of the shadow on the top, on the left, on the bottom, and on the right. You have to specify the thickness. And afterwards, you now have to specify the color of the shadow that you want, the color of the shadow that you want. So, and this also takes the pattern that padding and margin took. So if you specify just a singular value, so it means you want that singular value to be applied to all of these parts. And if you specify 2 values, the 2 values is going to be applied to the top and bottom and the left and the right. So it takes the same pattern. So I'm just going to specify same value. I'm just going to specify a singular value since I want it to apply to all, and I want to give it a gray color. And I told you about color code. Yeah, color code. Color code is what I'm using here. So this color code signify a gray color. If you're using Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio Code is going to do a beautiful thing for you by giving you the color of the color code that you currently typed, which is a very helpful thing to use. So okay, it's not applying. So let's be specific. Specific to all. Okay, so that works. So now you can see that's that raise. Yeah, that raise is what we want. Now we need to reduce the width. I don't want all of them to take the same width, so we need to reduce the width for them all. So I'm just going to give flex basis. Remember, you could as well use width. But I'm using flex basis because flex basis is the equivalent of width when you're doing Flexbox. Don't forget. So you can use flex basis and say I want them to all take 25% each. So this is 25% each. You can see 25% each. Now we have spacing here. So how do we make them now take the same pattern, the same alignment? We can do that by justify content, by specifying our justify content value. And justify content is specified in the container. This is Flexbox in action, guys. This is Flexbox. So beautiful. It makes your layout so beautiful. So we can come and say justify content. So we can make this space around, space evenly, space between, whichever one you love. And say it, guys, look at how beautiful this is. Yeah, it's how beautiful this is. So we can go further to increase the width. Actually, yeah, increase the width. And yeah, so we can I don't like the fact that the text is so close to the blog post container. I don't like that. And I also do not, I think the thickness of the shadow, of the box shadow, is too much. So we can reduce it a bit. Now, if you're using Visual Studio Code, you can click on, you can over on this particular color box, and you can lighten up the shadow a bit. Just lighten it up. Yeah, lighten up the shadow a bit, and it changed to RGB. This is RGB that I spoke to you earlier about. And we can also reduce the thickness of the shadow. Yeah, so now it's a bit faint. Yeah, that's what I want. So I'm also going to give my paragraph, my contents rather, my blog post content a padding. I'm going to give it a padding left because this is on the left. I'm going to give it a padding left. I'm fine with the padding on the top, and I think I'm going to give it also a bit of padding bottom. So padding right rather. I'm also fine with the padding on the bottom, so we can come and be specific because now we want to give specific values. So padding left, say padding left as, let's give it 20 pixels. Let's save. Now you can see that everything has moved, and this is beautiful. This is beautiful. Now I don't like the way my blog post text is looking. I want it to be justified. You know, when you're doing Microsoft Word, you have left alignment, you have right alignment, you have justified. And so I want this to be justified. That's the same thing we're going to do here. So, and notice, how do we target this P element? Notice that this P element is inside our blog post. So you can easily come here to say P, and say text align. Let's say justify. You can see that it's justified. Now, because it's justified, we have to specify a padding right as well. You have to, and this is the way you build, guys. This is the way you build, little by little by little by little. There's no, it's not something you pre-process. As you build, you see something you need to adjust, you adjust. You build, you see something you need to adjust, and you adjust. And that's the way you keep going. That's the way you keep going till you achieve what you want to achieve. Yeah. So we can also give it a padding right, and make this 20 pixel as well. And you can see, guys, that moved our content a bit. Now, the reason why it is not advisable for us to leave this P this way is because, I'll give you an example. Now, let's say we have another P outside of our section that is just a standalone tag, right? That is just a standalone tag and says, I don't want to be styled. It's just outside. Yeah, I don't want to be styled. Now, this P is going to affect this guy out here. It's going to affect this guy out here. I know it's not looking like it, but let's make it look like it. So I'm going to use my Lorem magic again. And okay, let's put it in a div. Let me put it in a div because I really want to show you the effects, which I know you've seen already, but I don't want to assume. So I'm just going to show it to you. And let's make this div. Let's make this div inside this section. Don't do this, guys. This I'm going to erase it. I'm just showing you. Yeah. So you can see that this particular text is justified. It is justified. And the reason why it's justified is because we did a general selection of the P tag. But that's not what you want to do. So now what we want to say is, give me the P tag inside blog post. Inside the blog post. If the P is not inside the blog post, don't apply this justify text alignment. Now you can see that. So you can see that your text is aligned, it's justified here, but on this part it is not justified. Yeah, it is not justified. This is left alignment. Yeah. So that's the effect of that. So make sure you don't make that mistake. So I'm going to remove this and we're going to look the way we have looked. Oh, something is wrong. Something looks funny. 25. Okay. All right. So yeah. We can go ahead to give our we can give our blog a button to say read more or see more. Let's do a see more here. See more. And we can copy this button and apply it to the rest of our blog. See more. Yeah. And we can even add an image to each of us. So let's style these buttons first, because these buttons do not look good. So let's style them. So what we want to do is we want to style all the button inside of the elements. Select rather. You can select the elements by using its tag. But you don't want to do that directly because there might be some buttons outside of your blog post that you don't want the same styling to be applied to. Yeah. So you can easily come and do blog posts button, and you can style this. So you can give it a, I'm going to give it a background color of black. So that's right. I want to remove the borders. I don't want any borders. So I'm going to just give it 0 pixel border. and I want the color of my text inside the button to go white. Yeah, that's good. Now I want to give it a padding, and I want this padding to be applied all around 20 pixel padding. That's too much, and I don't even want all around. I want top bottom to be 20 pixel, 10 pixel, and left and right to be 20 pixel. And you can see that. Now this space, I want to give it a margin. I want to give it a margin. I'm going to give it a margin bottom, so you can push this down a bit. So margin bottom, you can give it a 20 pixel margin bottom. And you can look at that, guys. Look at how beautiful it is. So I can just go ahead to repeat my block container again. So I have this. See this, guys? So all I just need to do now is, because I repeated the block containers, there is no space in between the block containers. So if you come and check the block containers, you can give them a border just to see what they look like. Border 2 pixel solid. So can you see the block containers? So this is the first block container, and this is the second block container. Now you can see that the reason why these block posts are merging with each other is because there is no space between the block containers. So what I can simply do is to give each of the block containers a margin bottom. A margin bottom. So what a margin bottom will do is to give it a space between the bottom of each block container with its outside world. So I can say 20 pixel. And now you can see the spacing. If it's not enough, you can play around it. You can increase it and make it 30 pixel. You can see the spacing. So that's it, guys. And you can, one last thing, we can add a footer. You can add a footer. Footer. And you can just add a p tag. Zion code farm blog site 2021, and that shows right there. So this is the end of our CSS class. I know we took about 2 hours, but trust me, guys, it is worth it. It is worth it. With these 2 hours is a launching pad for you into learning CSS. And this also that we do is just so that you do not have to go from one video to another, so we just compiled the whole thing and give you as a whole package. So if you're tired at some point, you can stop the video and continue, stop the video and continue, stop the video and continue, just to make sure that you don't get tired. But this is the work, guys. This is the work you need to put in to make the whole thing work out. As I said in the early stage, there is no fast or hard route to learning these things. You just have to be patient and give it the best of yourself. So make sure to leave a comment below if there's anything you want me to do, or if there's any question you need to ask. Make sure you leave a comment below. And if this course has really helped you, make sure you also give a positive feedback in the comment section, and don't forget to give it a like. If you want to have if you want to get more videos as regards web development, software engineering in the whole, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Thank you so much, and see you on the next one. Bye, guys.